Hey.
Hey.
Writer, artist, predominantly artist. I'm wondering, do you have any advice on doing an action scene while maintaining the fluidity of motion and keeping the pacing up without, I guess, letting it drag? What do you have? What advice do you have for action scenes, I guess?
Make them readable at all the times anyway. Don't worry too much about. You want to keep it visually interesting, so you want to kind of keep your camera angles varied, but without being distracting. So, if it's an action scene, the action needs to be clear and legible, and you might kind of have like a knuckles eye view of a punch and stuff, but if it's not really clear where that punch is, coming from, it's, so I guess don't be afraid to be kind of maybe meat and potatoes about it a little bit when you're first doing action scenes, because I think they need to be clean and readable, and then maybe kind of build up from that really, but also like varying your camera angle slightly, Also, action as well is kind of good if it works, because we read like in the West we read left to right. So if you've got action kind of traveling across the panel from left to right, it will seem like things are kind of moving faster. Like you're kind of so if you're for like a car chase, for example, which very rarely works in comics, but like if that car is traveling this way across the page, it's going to feel like there's sort of speed, whereas if the car is traveling this way across the page, it's feel like it's kind of coming towards you. It's kind of obstructing. It's limiting the sort of the speed that we would read that scene at, for example. So I guess be aware of things like that, perhaps.
Well, what if it's a horizontal thing, like someone's going up a parking garage while dealing with mooks?
I guess. Well, if they're going up a parking garage, well, what do you mean? So if a character's traveling upwards?
Yeah, they have to get from ground floor to the top to hit a thing.
I guess I would maybe use a slender vertical panel, perhaps, and just like literally show the character's relationship with his goal, and even if that character is on, like, say, for example, the lower left of that panel, kind of like looking up at his goal, do you know what I mean, or where he needs to get, or whatever, and it could be something like that. So, and then you could possibly use perspective then to kind of like draw the readers. Something, but kind of, it's kind of hard to be specific about it, but if you at least if your character's kind of like on the left hand side and you're kind of seeing their point of view, then at least you're reading it kind of left to right again.
So I'll give you a couple of, it's really hard to be specific when you're saying how do you do an action scene without seeing the story, and but a couple of generalized things. Number one is don't break the action to have characters stop and talk.
Yeah.
Okay. Probably Stan Lee, if you remember who Stan Lee was, when he was writing action stuff for comics, these guys would have like they would talk, college thesis while they're punching each other, they would just go on and on. And that might have been too extreme, but you could take some artist liberty and they could talk to each other even though they're getting smashed in the face, because you don't want to slow up the action by stopping people to, give exposition or snappy dialogue or whatever.
Yeah.
So you could take a little bit of liberty that way. The other thing is, compare comics to movies. In a movie, a typical second of a movie has 24 frames in it.
Yeah.
Right? A particular action might last a couple of seconds. So you might be talking about 100 or 200 frames of individual movements to comprise one action. In a comic, you pretty much got one panel to do what you could do in 100 or 200 frames in a movie.
Yeah.
So you got to figure out, in that action, what is the most effective way to show that action to its utmost. Pick out the frame in that movie, if that was a movie, pick out the frame that shows the action in the most extreme, powerful, expressive way, and that's what you want to draw. Don't pick out the frame that's in the middle of the action where the guy is going like this.
Yeah.
Pick out the frame where he's, going to some extreme, to the extremity of that particular movement.
Yeah, in the Marvel style where a punch.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so you know it. So I'm telling you stuff you already know. So that's good. You know that stuff. So, but those are things, because when I was an editor, I'd see a lot of people who were trying to break in, a lot of artists, showing me stuff that was just bland because they didn't take it to that next step. They showed me something that was kind of vaguely in the middle of the action that wasn't that interesting. And so I try to encourage people to think about, what's the most powerful point in that particular movement.
So a strong sense of dynamicism.
Yeah, but that's going to have the most impact on the reader.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. One last thing. How would you script that? Like, what would be a good way of conveying that to an artist?
conveying that to an artist?
Yeah, like, what would you say? Like, because my notes are rip off Rumble in the Bronx and hope nobody notices.
If you're working with a good artist, you wouldn't have to say those things. They would just assume that they're going to make that action as powerful as they can.
Yeah.
So if you think your artist needs to be prompted, you need to say that in your plot. You have dialogue, and you also have, like, a paragraph before the dialogue describing the scene, right, for that panel. So just say, really make this powerful, or really, play up this movement, whatever the movement is. And again, experienced artists don't have to be told that sort of thing. Typically, they know.
Yeah.
They know that's what they're being paid to do.
Yeah.
Anything else?
That's it, I think. Yeah.
That's it. Thank you for your time.
Cheers.
Yeah.